back to us. So we're able to keep everybody whole as we go along. And, you know, I think it is one bit of good news is to say that all of our tenants are doing well. They know they don't have debt. They know their stable housing is secure. And then in Durham, we have 135 apartments today, spread out across town. And I know since transit is your topic today, all well within bus lines. That's something CASA always looks for, is to make sure that our residents can access bus. Sidewalks are great too. And we kind of have two areas that we serve. Some of our apartments are designated specifically to serve people with disabilities. And an example of that is the CASA's Denton Apartments for Veterans, which is on Guest Road and Sedgefield Street. And so everyone who lives there is a veteran who lives with disabilities and ended their homelessness when they moved in. We also have apartments that have no disability requirement. They're disability neutral. So those are apartments typically for essential workers that based on income. And I definitely want to be able to answer a question if there is one. I will say one bit of potential future awesome news is that we have land under contract on North Duke Street, right across from Duke Regional. And we have submitted a request to the city for some funding to help us develop that as permanent supportive housing. And the staff is recommending it. So then the council will vote on it. We do have to do a rezoning for that land, but we're very hopeful that because of the need for affordable apartments like the ones we want to develop there, that it will be funded. And if so, we could be building it as early as a year from now. And we could fit 16 apartments there on that site, which is also super close to transit and would be a great location for anybody in Durham. I don't want to take too much time, but I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Great, thank you, Missy. We do have time for one or two questions. So if anyone has someone, Wib gave a note here. Missy, if you would put your contact information, website info for CASA in the chat so that other people can look for more information about you.
Absolutely.
Hi, this is Mimi. Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Mimi.
What is going on about the developing of that? I think it was a National Guard facility that's in the it's kind of near the Forest Hills area.
Yes, so that project is on hold and out of our hands at the current moment. We haven't given up hope. We're hoping maybe toward the end of the year, there'll be some more activity. CASA was awarded the land through the formal process, and then there is a very small portion of the land that has to be environmentally cleaned by the Army Corps of Engineers. And so it's really just stuck in some red tape right now. And if there is a time that we think advocacy would help, I would imagine that you all would be interested and willing to help with that. Right now, it seems like they are trying to move things forward. It's just taking a lot of time. So we're hopeful that, you know, once that, it's really a small activity, it just needs to happen before they can convey the land to us. So as of right now, the land does not belong to us yet.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I have one other question. Can you tell me on average, how much more does it cost to develop accessible housing that is for people with disabilities versus regular housing? I know there have to be some structural modifications relative to bathrooms and sometimes doorways and so forth. Can you tell me on a percentage basis how much more that costs versus normal development?
Unfortunately, I just don't have a number I feel is accurate to quote you on that. I work more in the fundraising communication side, so those categories aren't something I know off the top of my head. I will say though that you know, we typically, when we build new, we're going to build a certain number of fully accessible handicap units on the first floor of a community. However, Many people who live with disabilities don't require those fully accessible units. And so, you know, their disability may not be a physical disability or may not have those necessarily steps. So it's not necessarily more expensive to serve people who live with disabilities because everybody's not going to need a different physical building, if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Missy, and thank you for the questions, Mimi. I do want to move on to be respectful of Terrance's time. He's got a training he's got to jump back to very soon. So I want to introduce Terrance and get into the rest of our program. Thank you again, Missy. And she's dropped the website for CASA in the chat that you find there. And if you would introduce yourselves, just take a moment to put your information in the chat so we can see who you are and everyone can see that. Terrance is going to talk a bit about the Transit Equity Campaign. Terrance is a member of the Economic Committee for the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. He's a Durham native and has been kind enough to take time out of his workday to share a little bit more about the Transit Equity Campaign with you all. Terrance?
Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. First, I want to just thank you all for the opportunity to address the Coalition of Affordable Housing and Transit Community to discuss a campaign drafted to empower our people, more specifically our brothers and sisters of low income, with the tools to truly uplift themselves from the systematic inequities that have been placed upon their communities. It is known that Durham has a transportation system created through a history of decisions that have led to inequitable outcomes along racial and economic lines. To promote anti-racism and equitable outcomes, the Transit Equity Campaign will hold the public agencies in charge of updating the Durham County Transit Plan accountable to make sure the needs of current transit riders, transit workers, and low-wealth BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities are the first priorities in the transit plan. I, Terrance White, a representative of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People, is happy to work with Eric Lanfried of Bike Durham and join in union with the People's Alliance, Durham Congregations in Action, and you all at the Coalition for Affordable Housing and Transit. Together, we will build power to influence the priorities of the Durham County Transit Plan by number one, we will build a coalition of organizations who support prioritizing the needs of current transit riders and employees, and in particular, Durham low-wealth BIPOC communities. Number two, we will organize transit riders who will be directly affected by changes to the transit system to participate in the transit plan public engagement process. Number three, we will convene opportunities for transit riders, transit workers, low-wealth BIPOC communities, and other advocates to communicate transportation needs and to develop a common agenda of priorities. Number four, we will be evaluating investment scenarios brought forward by the public sector, Durham Transit Plan. And finally, we will hold decision makers accountable through petitions, media stories, and direct communication with elected officials. Together, we will right the wrongs of many years of systematic injustices that have plagued the true vision of democracy that was propagandized, drafted, and ratified following the American revolutions for true independence, liberty, and equality for all. Together, we will lift all sisters and brothers as we climb for a world that empowers all and not just the minority via the exploitation of hardworking people, seen evident in this current geopolitical and economic atmosphere. Together, we will eliminate the barriers of class, race, station, social status, and self-interest. Together, we will migrate. Together, we will transit. Together, we will move to dismantle the pillars of inequities via transportation. Together, we will win, and together, we will thrive. Thank you all for allowing me to introduce the Transit Equity Campaign. And with that, I'll pass it back to John.
Terrance, that was outstanding. Give him some applause up there with your either your hands or the little emojis.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terrance. So Terrance is not able to stay with us for the rest of the program here. So Eric Landfried, the campaign manager for the Transit Equity Campaign, is going to step in and introduce our next two speakers. And then I'll take it back toward the end.
All right, thank
Eric?
you, John. Yeah, and thanks, Terrance, for that great introduction. We're definitely going to call on you to do that again because that was awesome. So I want to introduce, we have two panelists today, and then there's going to be some time for questions and answers afterwards. So we're giving each of the panelists about 10 minutes to speak. And I'll introduce the first one and then get to the second one when she's done. So the first panelist is Hatley McCoy. Hatley is a resident of Durham. She works with an organization or a group called Champions for Change, which really came out of an organization called Families Moving Forward, which is a great organization. If you're not familiar with them, you should definitely look them up. They really work to help families who are trying to move out of the, a temporary crisis of homelessness into more stable housing. And so Hatley has been working with that organization, and there's been a group who gets together every month. And we had a great conversation when they restarted this group back in June, I believe, about what their transit needs are and how that relates to housing opportunities that they have, and those two are very intricately linked. So it's been great to get to know Hatley and hear her tell her stories of the opportunities that's given her, but also some of the challenges of the transportation system here in Durham for her and her family. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Hatley.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, Eric, for inviting me to this panel. I've been trying to think about the different ways that I can explain, because I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina, and I've moved around. I've lived in New York, I've lived in Atlanta, and also California. So I actually have firsthand experience of like a more broad metropolitan area. A lot of the reasons I moved away from Durham was because of transportation and the housing that was available to me through public transportation, because I couldn't afford a car, and also jobs. So all those things is like the basic needs of someone who, can live life as an adult. Like, you need to be able to work, and childcare is another thing.
Oh, Hatley, I think you just got on mute. There you go.
Sorry.
No
So
worries.
being able to get your kids to daycare or school and also make it to work on time, and it's just a lot of factors. So I'm going to start with, I wrote down some key points. So with the housing, so a lot of people who don't own cars, they have to like pick certain places to live where there's like transportation that's close, like a bus stop that's not like 2 miles down the road. And a lot of those places are not great areas. They have a lot of crime, people that, it's just not a safe neighborhood to walk in, even if it's like right in front of your door. It's not safe at all. I lived in Families Moving Forward, which was a shelter, and literally it was a bus stop right up the street that someone got shot and killed. And I was there with my kids, and I would have to take that exact bus stop to get anywhere I needed to go. And it was during the day. It's not even like these criminals wait until night. Nowadays, it doesn't matter what time of day it is, it's not safe. So the better neighborhoods, like right now I stay in North Durham, and they just now put bus stops like further out that way, which those are the nicer neighborhoods. So I used to go to Riverside High School when I was younger, and a lot of the people walking in that area, it's not a lot of great sidewalks or bus stops. A lot of the kids that went to that school, we had a lot of deaths of kids getting hit by cars because the sidewalks there were just no sidewalks. So that's still a problem today, like especially I'm going to talk a lot about the families and single moms, with kids. We have strollers. So trying to walk to a store that's literally down the street from you is a very difficult task, and you have to go get food. It's a very difficult task because there's no sidewalk. You yourself definitely don't want to get hit by a car, but you're not going to risk your child's life, and walking in a stroller in the street. That also affects the bus stops. You'll have a bus stop that's literally like almost in the street, and then behind you, there's like a ditch. So there's really nowhere for you to place a stroller without it being in the street or for you to stand. So I just think that's crazy. Also, I don't personally have this problem, but I do have friends that catch public transportation, and I know every bus stop can't have, like, I guess you call it a shelter with the benches. But a lot of people with back problems or, a lot of weight or, just any kind of issue, it's nice to have somewhere to sit to wait for the bus. Some people don't mind standing, but also the shelter, when there's bad weather, rain, you literally just have to stand in the rain waiting for the bus. Another thing with the children, so like I said, I've lived in Georgia. So in Georgia, we're not required to take down a stroller in order to get on the bus. So that's a difficult thing because one, it's already hard enough to catch a bus with a child that can't get on the bus themselves and sit down themselves, like an infant. It's very hard, but you got to do what you have to do. We have to break down the stroller, take the child out, break down the stroller by ourselves, put that stroller. They only let down the wheelchair ramp for people with wheelchairs. So it's not like we can roll. I think we should be able to roll the stroller onto the bus because that's a lot. I'm trying to carry a baby and a stroller, and then I got to put the stroller up under the seat and then sit down and hold the child. Or if it has the car seat, detachable thing, you put the car seat beside you. I think that's craziness. And in Atlanta, we can get on the bus with the stroller and we don't have to let it down. I feel like if there are places for people with wheelchairs, it should be places for that as well. That's a lot. A lot of the times people have to, like strangers, have to help you because like it's rare that someone can do it on their own. And right now with COVID going on, that's not ideal. And a lot of people with children are just not riding the bus because nobody wants someone else to touch their stroller or their baby. Let's see. Travel time. So it's ridiculous. So there's only one bus station for all of Durham. So it takes a bus to go all around whatever route they're taking and then come back to the bus station. So whoever's waiting at that bus station has to wait 30 minutes to an hour for the next bus. I feel like if there were multiple stations, instead of people from all sides of Durham just coming downtown to catch a bus, to catch another bus, to go to the same side of town, but just the other side of the street where the route that they have to catch right in front of their house, it doesn't go to. You have to go downtown. Like literally, I had a job that was maybe 5 or 10 minutes away from my house, driving on the same side of town, but the bus that came in front of my house didn't go that far down. So I had to catch the bus. I had to wake up like 2 hours early, get dressed, catch the bus, because sometimes you miss your connection. So you got to make room for that because your job is not going to care that you miss your connection. You're late. So you wake up early, you catch the bus all the way downtown to catch another bus that's going to take you past your house 5 or 10 minutes down the street. So no time I had to find a daycare as well to, because I would not have time to get on the bus and take my child to daycare. So I was very limited in the daycares that I could choose because I had to make sure that they had transportation to pick my daughter up. And so a lot of the great daycares that I wanted her to go to, I wasn't able to take her there because it didn't have transportation. I'm sorry, I don't know how long I was talking, so please let me know when I start to run out of time. So
You're doing fine, Holly. Maybe do 2 or 3 more minutes, I think.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, okay. So I did write down an app. So in Georgia, they have this app, which I know we have an app here, but it's not that good and it's not accurate. So if we could put more time into an app that shows you like a live feed of where the bus is at that moment, because a lot of times the bus is so late and it's like, oh, it's supposed to come at this time, and you're looking at the map and it says it's like down the street or it came already, and that's not the case. That would really help people who do have extra funds to maybe use Lyft or catch a cab or something, to know that, okay, I'm not going to make it to work on time or wherever they're trying to go on time. So if the bus is running, and so also when you put in a destination, instead of like people having to call all the time and it's like, oh, how do I get from here, from my house to the store in East Durham? You could put in the address and it gives you like multiple ways that you can get to that place on the app. They also list all the bus stops, and it's just a very great app. I was going to talk about the train, but I heard that was like canceled. So that's I'm just going to touch a little bit on that because it's a very big thing. There's a train in Atlanta, everyone knows. Literally, people with cars, they will park at a train station and ride the train for the rest of the day because it's faster and the traffic there is horrible. So like, you really don't need a car if you live like in the metropolitan area, but a lot of people, they don't stay close, or they choose to, not stay in the busy areas. So they'll just drive to the nearest train station, which is, it's a lot of them, park their cars, it saves gas, it saves time, and they just ride the train all day until they're ready to go home. Also, just talking with a lot of my friends, I explained to them a lot of these changes are probably going to come with it being more expensive to ride the bus. And even though a lot of people that I'm friends with, we don't have a lot of money, but we think it's worth it because one, we'd be able to access more money, we would be able to get better jobs. And so we will be willing to pay more for better access to buses, bus station, cut back on time, and easier to travel with your kids. So I think that's all that I have. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope that helped in any way it could. Thank you.
Great job, Holly. Thank you so much for sharing your your perspective, and I think it's great to hear about some of your experiences in other cities as well. We have a lot to learn from other parts of the country, and it's great to hear that as well. I want to introduce our second panelist, and then make sure we have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So Sean Egan is Durham's transportation director. He came here from the Washington, D.C. area about a year ago, and is heavily involved in all things transit in Durham. The city, in contract with Go Triangle, still manage Durham system, and he's been has brought a lot of really great ideas, I think, so far from his experiences in DC and other areas to Durham. So with that, I will turn it over to Sean.
Thanks so much, Eric. And I just want to start by saying how excited I am to have the opportunity to come and share the work that we're doing and some of the goals that we have for the city of Durham and our transportation department as we think about affordable housing and transit and how important those links are. I'll just say that Holly is a tough act to follow, and so I'm so glad that we had that perspective in here. I think that having the perspective of community members who rely on our service every day is critical, and it's something that we have to keep in front of mind as we move through this important work. So thank you, Holly, for writing, and thank you for sharing that feedback. So I'll start by just applauding the Transit Equity Campaign's focus on the needs of Go Durham riders. We're excited to partner with the campaign, in particular to ensure that the Durham County Transit Plan update prioritizes investments that will benefit communities of color and low wealth households with limited transportation options. So the campaign launch press release reminded me of the budget presentation I made to the City Council in February, when I shared some key demographic information about Go Durham riders, more than 80% of whom are people of color, 75% of whom have household incomes less than $25,000, and more than 2/3 of whom live in zero-car households. In the final budget presentation we made to Council in May, I concluded with the recommendation that given the demographics of the Go Durham riders, there's no better transportation investment to promote racial equity than improving Go Durham services and infrastructure, such as the 15-minute service frequency Go Durham has implemented on the Route 5 corridor as of this past weekend, and the development of the Fayetteville and Holloway transit emphasis corridors, access to transit, bus speed and reliability, and other initiatives we secured funding to advance through the county transit plan. My department has fully adopted the Equitable Community Engagement Blueprint and has partnered with Neighborhood Improvement Services. I see Laura Beeger is on the call here. So we're so excited to be working closely with NIS. And we're also using the connections and relationships of our community partners, such as Spirit House. And I saw Ideal Ortiz, who is someone we've worked very closely with on our projects, is also on the call. So it was great to see that participation. We're doing this, we've made this commitment to equitable community engagement to ensure that transportation plans and projects benefit from input from communities historically excluded from the decision-making process. You know, as we move through the evaluation of transportation alternatives, I've also raised some inconvenient questions about other transit projects that are competing for funding through the transit plan update, such as the commuter rail project, when they have not embraced robust and equitable community engagement. For example, we know that online-only engagement does not reach many communities in Durham. However, the commuter rail public engagement plan currently calls for all engagement to be conducted online, such as the web survey that was launched last month. This approach reinforces the digital divide that excludes many communities in Durham. So as we move forward with the update of the Durham Transit Plan, it will be critical to emphasize the needs of Go Durham riders for better service and better infrastructure. From the transit corridors to things like the bus stop, shelter, and bench infrastructure that Holly spoke about just a moment ago. Go Durham service provides connections across Durham, and we have an incredible opportunity to intentionally direct resources to communities of color and low wealth households historically underserved or even harmed by transportation investments. Local and regional bus service also provides flexibility to respond to changes in housing and development patterns to ensure that as new affordable housing becomes available, it can be effectively served by transit. Durham is growing and changing, and investments limited to 1 or 2 geographically fixed corridors are unable to respond to emerging needs. So I'll conclude by saying I'm so grateful for the opportunity to work with the Transit Equity Campaign and partners such as Terrance at the Durham Committee for the Affairs of Black People. We look forward to working with the campaign to raise the profile of transit riders in Durham and ensure that their needs are prioritized in the update of the transit plan. So with that, I want to leave a few minutes for questions.
Thanks so much, Sean. So yeah, as she mentioned, we can take some questions now. Probably the easiest ways to do that are to either put something in the chat, or you can use the raise hand function, which for those who are new to this, if you click the participants button, which is I think usually at the bottom of most people's screens, there is a button there that says raise hand on the left. And I'll try to look out for that. John, if you can also be looking out for that and calling out people. But honestly, if you want to just unmute yourself and speak up and say, I have a question, that works just as well. So if anyone has questions, why don't you go ahead and start asking. Okay, so hold on, let me, Marie Hill says raising her hand. So go ahead, Marie. Oh, and don't forget to unmute, Marie. I think you're still muted.
Okay. How's that?
That's good, thank you.
Okay, as I don't know how many people know that I'm a paratransit worker. I've been a paratransit worker for 18 years, and I realize that we're still out of the picture. But historically, we've been invisible in this process, and I'd like to bring light to also the people that ride our service are Black and brown people predominantly, too, low income, fixed income, disabled, physically, mentally. And so we have challenges, and we're also essential workers. So I'm very concerned with the safety issues that we have in the world of COVID-19. That is number one. Safety for the passengers and the workers is so important, and I'm not seeing that put into place. And also the inclusion of the racial lens when the contract was gotten for paratransit workers. There was no inclusion, there was no committee reviewing it. And so we're right back to where we started, as maybe even worse, because there's nobody monitoring the process there. We have a new company, and we have maintenance issues, and we have worker issues. We have many things that are not being addressed, and I think it's based on not being put through the process that is to protect us and the community. And so the community is the main concern, and the community that I see are the riders and the workers. And we operate a little different than the fixed bus routes, but we do the same work. And I have always advocated for pay equity as far as that for the workers. And you know, being essential workers, we need protections for ourselves and our families. And so if we were to die, or because we're essential, or to get sick, those things need to be in place. I just wanted to, I don't want to stay on here long because I know I could get long-winded, but I wanted to bring light to that and let people know the situation, because I didn't hear paratransit at all. And there are more needier people. I don't know if that could be, but Black and brown people, basically. And we need to pay attention to that too. That's what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much, Marie. And thank you for continuing to bring up paratransit, because it is an essential service. We really appreciate the work that you're doing and helping us with the transit equity campaign, make sure that we're focusing not just on fixed route, but those who are using the access bands. And even beyond paratransit, that can serve other parts of the county that are difficult to serve with fixed route bus service. And so I think that's going to be a big part of the conversation for the transit plan update. There's a few questions in the chat, so let me go through a couple of them. One is from Lloyd. I think this is probably aimed mostly at Sean, which is what percentage of Go Durham's budget is covered by rider fares, the fares that are collected?
So our traditional budget fare recovery is a little under 10%. So right now we're not collecting fares. We suspended fare collection in March through the because of the pandemic and concerns about social distancing. So right now we'll fall well below that, but the traditional budget is around 10% of our fixed route service.
Yeah, thank you. I see there's a hand raised, Regina Mays. Why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I have kind of two back-to-back questions real quick. The first one is, how is the transit committee planning to address problematic issues that have evolved due to recent changes? For example, relocating of bus stops and routes. And my second part is, what will be or can be done to have better communication between DOT, transit staff, the city, and ridership?
Well, I can start in on that. So one of the initiatives that we were planning for and we're advancing in the spring before the pandemic hit was the transition of our traditional bi-monthly Meet the Riders events, where we would hear from riders at Durham Station and address their concerns. But there really wasn't an ongoing organization or structure to make sure that there was follow-up and that we had a regular opportunity between those meetings every other month to hear from riders, to share with riders major developments on our system and service, and hear some of the opportunities for improvement. So we're working right now to develop a group of riders and rider advocates who can be that organization for us, and we're looking forward to working with the Transit Equity Campaign to get to help with the recruitment for that effort. And we really want this to be a group of regular riders who can share feedback that they're hearing, that they're seeing, but then also can serve as a conduit to our rider community, so that we can let people know about changes that are coming up, share ideas and get feedback on proposed changes. So that's something that I think there'll be a great opportunity for partnership with the Transit Equity Campaign and bringing that group together, standing that up, and having that be an ongoing resource where we can learn about problems and come back to that group and say, this is a potential solution. Do you think this would address the problem? Here are some of the performance issues that you've raised in terms of on-time performance, reliability, ability to make transfers at Durham Station. Here's the work that we're doing. We think it's either getting better or staying the same. Is that your experience? And we can really validate some of those performance issues and hear directly from riders about their experiences. So that's a project that I think we really are looking forward to getting moving forward on that.
Thanks, Sean. We have another question in the chat from Becky Winders, which is, I think, a good one, especially for this group, of how you're coordinating, or how the Durham Transit team as a whole is coordinating the planning for the transit corridors with the planning department and others on the update to the comprehensive plan, which is also going on right now.
Sure. So this is a really great opportunity for us, as you know, so much of the ability to provide effective transit depends on land use patterns and whether we have land use that's supportive of transit ridership. And so as we put forward plans to improve transit on corridors like Fayetteville and Holloway that have really transit supportive land uses on them, but we're working with the city county planning department to identify future locations, future corridors, and to make sure that that the comprehensive plan update provides the tools and resources for transit supportive density and development to take place in new and emerging development areas in Durham, so that transit can be provided and can be effective and successful in those areas. So very often, land use planning is done completely separate from transportation and transit planning. But with the Engage Durham process that we kicked off in November last year, both the transit plan and comprehensive plan are being advanced jointly. We have regular updates. We updated Sarah Young, the city county planning director, and I gave our update to the city manager and the executive team this morning on what we're doing to advance both of those plans. And our staffs are working very closely together to identify opportunities to provide better tools for land use development in the comprehensive plan that will be supportive of transit. So it's top of mind for the land use concerns are top of mind for us in transportation, and we know that transportation and transit supportive development is something that is a key priority that's been identified by the planning department as part of the comprehensive plan update.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. We have time for maybe one or two more questions. There's a couple in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. One is, it's another question from Lloyd, but I'm actually going to put this to Holly rather than to Sean. He's asking about the possibility of developing routes that that don't go downtown, right? That are more crosstown services or circulator services. So Holly, my question to you is, and that's certainly a possibility with the funds available, so I'll answer that directly. But Holly, what are some destinations or places that you'd like to be able to get to more directly without having to go downtown?
Yeah, so it's a lot of different reasons why I wouldn't need to go downtown. One was the job that I worked at. Like I said, it was down the street from my house, going the opposite direction, but I had to go back downtown. So just places in, like, you could put like all northern Durham. So it's like, oh, I want to go to the left or the right of me, but that's not possible because like the buses are going only in one direction from the station. So you have to go downtown, just go one or two streets over from where you already are. A lot of things that I've seen in other places that I lived in is I don't know how possible this is because I don't know anything about the land and like where you can develop these things. But from what I saw is they had different bus stations around the city. Therefore, like, you don't have to go downtown. You can go to the east station. You can go to, and it like they go back and forth that way, like in different directions, or more than one bus. Or if that's not possible, I'm not quite sure if having a bus that goes in a circular way would benefit, because it just depends on how many buses would do that, how often they would come around, because I feel like it would still be like a time management thing. So I'm not sure, like I said, I'm not sure like how, like if we're able to build other stations, but I feel like that would be like an awesome thing if we could build other stations. Therefore, you can have more buses because it's not enough places for the buses to park that we have. So we're limited on the buses that we can have to go around Durham anyway. If you have multiple places, that's more buses that can run at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and it's certainly something that I know, I used to work for Go Triangle for 12 and a half years, and it's something that we talked about often. And, John, I think brought this up in the chat box, but I want to reiterate, which is that, most of the work that's been done over the last 10, 15 years has been really using the same budget. It's been using mostly the same funding. There's been a little bit of additional funding from the transit plan. But when we first started 10 years ago, there were, pretty massive on-time performance issues that had to be addressed. So a lot of the money just went into addressing some existing concerns. We now have an opportunity through this plan update to really expand beyond that and start to think about those types of neighborhood transit centers that are outside of downtown and the connecting pieces that you mentioned. So it's great to hear that that's something that would be of use to you and lots of other people. We just have 1 minute left. Sean, I'm going to put you on the spot because this is a question from Betsy Kreitz that I told her I would get to. Betsy is with End Hunger Durham, and we had a great conversation with some members of some of the senior housing apartments throughout Durham last week. And this issue of the senior food shuttle, which is something that was funded last year, but had to be delayed because of COVID. It came up quite a bit in that conversation. That seemed like an idea that people really glommed onto. So if you have any update on that you'd be willing to share, I think that would be great.
So yeah, I mean, I remember, it seems like a lifetime ago, but when we were moving forward with the planning of that project in the spring, I think because of the need for social distancing, we've significantly reduced the capacity available on both our fixed route and paratransit services. And we're also very mindful of the importance of social distancing, particularly for high risk populations. So we're not ready to advance the food shuttle at this point, but we're going to continue to monitor the pandemic, and as rates come down, we'll look at opportunities to advance that program forward. But right now, with the capacity limitations that we have on our system, we're not able to initiate new services.
Okay, thank you for that. So we are out of time. I did just want to mention in the chat box, I put the link again to the Transit Equity Campaign on Bike Durham's website. And also there's, I put in the direct link to sign on to the campaign. You can either sign on as an individual or as an organization. I promise not to bombard you with emails. I just sent out the first one last night, finally. But it'd be great if you want to sign on and get information. And we're also posting a lot of stuff about the actual plan, the transit plan development itself. We had put a link to the engagement ambassadors sign up through that email that Ideal mentioned earlier in the chat, and the survey that the transit team is putting out there. So it's another great way to stay involved in the process. I want to thank Sean and Holly, and I know Terrance had to go, but to all three of them for participating today, and you all had incredible things to say. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to John.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Sean. So we have some updates on other work that the coalition has been up to. First, I'm going to turn to Jim Savara for an update on the property tax assistance program. Jim?
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, John. As you hopefully know, as a result of efforts that we made, there have been some tax assistance options that are available. The county has created a deferred payment approach. There is 1 more year's eligibility for the city's longtime homeowners grant program too, for Southside, Northeast Central Durham, and West End. We are developing some promotional material. We'll share that with the network, with a mailing list. And we're looking at some training activities too, and I hope that you can help in our effort to spread the word and assist people in making applications.
Thank you, Jim. Dick, can you share an update on the proposed zoning amendments related to the affordable housing bonus?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Great program this morning. Going on for over a year now has been a group of proposed amendments to Durham's development ordinance that would do a variety of things. Most important to us have been trying to reduce the maximum number of unrelated individuals in a single household. That's been capped at 3 for many, many years, and with more diverse household types and housing needs in Durham, I think it's appropriate to raise it. The current proposal that is going before the city council for a public hearing on Monday, November 2nd, would raise that to 5, which is important change. There are other changes in that package of amendment that we're following as well, or felt to be beneficial to affordable housing density bonus that we'd like to see more developers using as well. And glad to provide any answers to questions if anyone else is following that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Dick. Larissa, do you have an update on the Braggtown rezonings? I noticed that Constance Wright and Vanessa Evans are on the call as well. So thank you for joining us.
Great. I do want to say quickly that I did put into the chat a very first draft of a statement of support for equitable development. And that was requested by folks from Braggtown. And I, since Vanessa and Constance are here, if they want to report on the rezoning that was scheduled originally for November 16 in front of City Council. And as far as we know, there's no official word that that has changed. But I do want to emphasize before I ask them to say a few words that the coalition does not take stands on rezonings. The coalition does take stands on affordable housing and transit and race equity. And so we are considering a statement that would support equitable development plans that include these principles. And of course, you all as individuals and other groups can take your own stands on rezoning cases. I'm going to mute myself and ask Vanessa or Constance if they want to update us very quickly.
Just a quick brief statement that we're still going forward to City Council. Right now, it looks like the larger development, Tim Cyrus has pulled his papers from the city planning. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. None of us know what's going on. They're not giving us any indication of what's happening at this point. The smaller site, which is with Pam, she is still on the books, but she's doing some extension work to her plan, which is she's trying to change her, I guess, text amendment. So to stay on or in front of this particular project, we don't know if we don't go to City Hall, they might try to come back and come in and we not be in the space. So what we're going to do is we're going forward as if they're there. So we're just asking people to still send in emails, send in their letters of support. And if you can be on a call that night on November the 16th, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Larissa. Wib, can you share an update on the Northgate redevelopment? Wib, you're muted.
As I've said, I'm probably better that way. Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. As I think probably all of you all know, they're a new development team company out of Charlotte purchased the Northgate Mall, about a 45 acre site, and has been talking about redevelopment there for a year and a half, for 2 years, and has had some interaction with neighborhoods around there, not a lot, and particularly not a lot during the pandemic. But there's two developments I wanted to make sure that people were aware of. One is that the Walltown Community Association, the Walltown neighborhood, has been a catalyst to bringing together 6 other neighborhoods that are in the Northgate area. And they are working together as the Northgate Mall Neighborhood Council. And they've been active, and one of the things they've done is done a design charrette or design exercise to try and develop focus on their ideas for what might be beneficial coming out of that redevelopment. And I think that work got off to a great start about a month ago, but is continuing and will continue from what I understand through the winter and into the spring. So I know they'd like to welcome anybody in the community who wants to be involved and learn more about that and help them. The second piece is that several of us, coalition, have been involved in a couple of conversations with the new developers about affordable housing. I would say those conversations are in progress, but we have not gotten to a particular place yet. But there's a couple of ways that they could do affordable housing there, including reserving a part of the land for another developer to do it, or perhaps using a development agreement approach with the city that would let them have more density there in return for community benefits. And one of the key community benefits would be affordable housing. So there's an update. Be happy to talk to people offline about more information if they want it. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Webb. And thank you all for joining us today. Again, Holly McCoy, Sean Egan, Eric Landfried. Really appreciate you all being here and the great questions and good discussion. That brings us to a conclusion of today's community meeting. We'll see you all next month.